Okay, so one of the biggest responses I've ever gotten from a teaching was from Friday night when I taught on the 9 dysfunctional family rules. Okay, and so I think this is information that everybody needs and everybody needs to understand. So now I'm going to talk about just rule 1. Okay, and rule 1 in the 9 rules is it's not okay to talk about our problems. It's not okay. And that's a problem. That's a problem in a family if you can't talk about your problems with each other or with somebody else. Because what will happen is it will create a sense of impending doom. All right? Impending doom. If we pretend the problems will go away and they don't go away, then eventually we start feeling like the shoe is going to drop. How many of you are walking around with that, I just know the other shoe is going to drop syndrome? This might be the root of it. It could be that you grew up in a family system that wouldn't allow you to even acknowledge your problems, better yet, not talk about them. And that can create that feeling of impending doom. You can also have knots in the stomach or free-floating anxiety, headaches, sleeplessness. This all comes from denying problems exist. And then the next level is that you get numb. And so when there are problems, you're just numb to them. You walk around kind of like a zombie. You're falling apart and yet you can't say anything or you can't tell anybody. People ask you and you just clam up and don't tell them because you're so committed to the family system and the function of that because you don't know any different. You're not committed to it of your own motive, really. You're committed to it because you've been trained to be committed to that rule. And what happens is that it can foster a very deep personal shame, which causes you to eventually avoid and overlook problems, not look at problems, and avoidance leads to a lot more dysfunction. We know that. We know that avoiding things creates an environment for us to deeply be in denial, which can keep us locked up for a long time in our life. So a healthy, normal family is not one that is problem-free. We know that. But it is a family that faces their problems and deals with them in a healthy manner. How do you do that? You ask for help. Okay? Help can be found in many places. It can be found at Celebrate Recovery. It can be found at church. It can be found with a good counselor. It can be found with a good mentor. It can be found with a good friend who's living a good life. You know, I remember when I was young, this rule operated in my family. As a matter of fact, from the time I was very young to even today, my mother would say to me, "Don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody." And so I would be afraid. You know, I was being told from a very young age not to tell anybody. And I remember distinctly, I will never forget this, when I was in 5th grade, the secretary of my elementary school wanted to talk to me because I was in a lot of stress. I was experiencing all of these symptoms, knots in my stomach and anxiety and headaches, and I had a feeling of impending doom, and I think that she could tell that was going on with me. And so she pulled me aside, and I remember we were sitting in the garage, where the buses would pull in. It was kind of like an area where the maintenance guys would sit. And we were sitting at this table and she was talking to me. It was the very first time that I had ever told anybody that my parents were divorced, that I missed my dad. It was the first time I had ever opened up to anyone because I had spent my life lying up to this point. Lying was a big result of this rule in my life. So I started lying at a very young age to get attention, to deny the reality of my life. And because I felt I couldn't tell anybody. And so when I'm finally in 5th grade, I remember sitting and telling this person something and being afraid, telling her, being afraid that something was going to happen, and surely not telling anybody that I had told her. And so it continued. And I will tell you, beloved, that beyond that, I truly believe that one of the big roots and causes of my alcoholism and drug addiction was this rule. this rule that said you can't talk about your problems, you can't tell anybody. And because of that, I had such a deep, deep feeling inside of me and such an impending doom inside of me, and I didn't know what to do with it. And the only way I knew to get rid of it was to medicate it. And unfortunately, my choice of medication at the time was alcohol and drugs. And part of that is because I had, my father was an alcoholic. I had grown up seeing that used as a way to medicate problems and issues. And so it was my first choice. It was the easiest choice. I did choose other things throughout my life, but that was really my main one. So, number 1, dysfunctional family rule. It is not okay to talk about problems. That is a lie from the pit of hell. And if you have grown up in that family system or you are perpetuating it, you need to stop. It is okay to talk about problems. As a matter of fact, it's encouraged to talk about problems in the Bible. It says a wise man seeks counsel. So I encourage you to explore this. If you have it operating in your life, to seek help, to stop this before it perpetuates. Because it is okay to talk about your problems. But it is important that you choose the right place to do that, the right people to do that with, the safe place. Like I said before, Celebrate Recovery, a good counselor, good mentor, somebody who will respect confidentiality, but yet work with you and lead you to the Word for answers to your problems. God has the answers, but sometimes we can't find it on our own. That's why in Ecclesiastes chapter 4, God tells us 2 are better than 1. If one falls down, the other one can help him up. Woe to the man who has no one when he falls. So seek help when you need it. Seek people who will lead you to the Word of God. And I am excited about the freedom that will come when you start breaking the cycle of this rule in your life. Break rule 1.